أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا Muhammad وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. O Allah, open our hearts and open our minds, guide us to be a community of students who seek your pleasure and understand your revelation and the guidance of your Prophet Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. O Allah, instill in our hearts compassion and understanding and kindness in this setting, and guide us to true understanding of all that you wish for us. Ameen. This class is going to be very interactive, inshallah. We're learning from all of the great experience that people are bringing to this classroom. Many of these issues are quite sensitive. So Fuad and I have spoken about this, and certainly we won't be recording all the time. All he's interested in doing is getting some content from the lectures or discussion that can be used for a short, public kind of podcast content. But anytime you wish to not be recorded, also just let us know. I mean, if there's something you want to say and you really want to make sure it's off the record, absolutely we turn that off. We don't want to be inhibited in any way by that. Also, the classroom is a place of trust and confidence. So what we discuss in here, we shouldn't, if there's something that anyone confides in us that has a personal, sensitive aspect, please don't share it with other people unless you've asked them, if that's possible. You can say, I was really moved by that story you told me. Would it be okay if I used, if I told other people as a lesson or something like that? So let's, the key to a class like this is to build a sense of confidence, trust, collegiality, so that we can be honest and forthright, frank. And if you hear something that you find confusing, someone makes a comment, let it sit for a while and then ask for, feel free to ask for clarification if I don't. You can say, I heard you saying this, I'm a little confused by that from this angle or that angle. So let's give each other the benefit of the doubt. We all want the same things, but one of the lessons in a class like this is to understand that sometimes some of our language or terms we use might be heard by people in a different way. And we are a very diverse community, and so we can learn from each other how to express ourselves in a way that conveys what we would like to say, at the same time not be misunderstood by others, or sometimes even have our assumptions challenged or our categories or ways of speaking challenged. Would anyone like to ask a question about the kind of context or for the classroom or any of the things that I've said up to now?
Do we keep a book for today's class?
Yes, you should always bring your book, and if you don't, who does not have their book with them today? Okay.
This one is blue on the front. Is that the same thing? It's the one that they have on the CST.
I do not know.
Electronic version has a blue cover.
Oh, but it's the same book? It's not a different edition? Okay. Yeah.
Same edition, just don't have
Everyone realized that everyone's looked at the syllabus and seen the readings, and whenever there are readings listed, you should have read them in preparation for the class today. So how many people have read chapter 5 of this book? Good. Okay, excellent. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to begin with this chapter, Chaplaincy Politics. Then we'll be looking at the spirit study on prison, Islam in prison. Looking at a few of the videos And then at the end of the afternoon, so first we're looking at prison chaplaincy, and then we'll be looking at military chaplaincy and some of the issues, okay? This, as I said in the initial online class discussion, this book obviously is published in the UK and is inclined towards, you know, the UK reality, with the exception of the chapter on Islam in America. However, a lot of the issues are the same. I mean, the big, sort of big picture issues. So we can learn a lot from it, I believe. It really, you know, someday there will be a good book on chaplaincy, Muslim chaplaincy specifically in America. But I think this is a very good book in the meantime. So what I want to do is start by just going through Chapter 5, highlighting some issues that I think are critically important that are mentioned, and there are many in this. I mean, these are the kind of issues that are raised in Chapter 5 are things that you'll be dealing with, you know, your whole career, really. And a lot of these issues take time and experience to understand their significance and how to engage with them. Reading this, we have the benefit of people who have tried to deal with them in different ways. So as I highlight a few things, if you have a question, just raise your hand, all right? Otherwise, I'll keep going. Okay, so we're beginning Chapter 5 with chaplaincy politics. And this is politics in the big picture politics. I mean, small p and sometimes capital P. So one of the first issues that they identify, so we're on page 99. That's a good number to start with for an Islamic class, right? We'll start with page 99. One of the issues they raise is the that some chaplains in some sectors might have to wrestle with conflicting perceptions of their role. Muslim prisoners might see Muslim chaplains as government agents or spies who are compromising their message and their religious integrity. Prison staff might regard them with suspicion as agents of radicalization. Other chaplaincy team members might resent the special attention that Muslim chaplains receive, whether positive or negative. Within chaplaincy teams, disputes arise around budget and staffing, the use of space and resources, and the communication and sharing of information. For some Muslim chaplains, increasing seniority has sometimes been personally and professionally challenging. Other colleagues may resent their authority and enhanced profile. So to sum up, we have some things that are perhaps specific to the context of our time, which is a time where there's great distrust about government. You know, Muslims distrust government, and the general society, American population or other British populations distrust Muslims. So the combination of Islamophobia, breakdown of trust in institutions, all sorts of, and these are not irrational fears. You know, they're all based in things that sometimes misperceptions, but also specific instances that have happened in the past. So for example, when people in the Muslim community or in an institution like prison are suspicious of a new Muslim chaplain coming in, you know, unless they've been introduced to that chaplain through someone else who they really trust, is it rational for them to have a bit of caution about that person? Does anyone think that's a rational? Why? Can you express why that might be rational? Chris?
It's human nature. I mean, when change comes about, if it's not something that you wanted, you're going to be hesitant towards it. And if it's somebody being introduced to the environment that you're not familiar with, of course you're going to be standoffish in any environment.
And so that's a human tendency. What about the specifics of our time? What might exacerbate that kind of general tendency towards distrust or caution, maybe not distrust but caution of new people, and what can transform?
Just the prevailing.
Just raise your hand, please, when you, yeah,
Just
Enrique.
the prevailing attitude, Islamophobia, whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
just constant, bombardment with anti-Islamic rhetoric.
Mhm.
People have these stereotypes.
Well, what about Muslim prisoners if a new Muslim chaplain comes in, Safwan?
I think with the amount of surveillance, the amount of kind of counterterrorism efforts, everyone's kind of growingly suspicious, even of a new chaplain or a new imam or people in positions of power. Everyone's heard a story or two or three, even within their own communities. So it is natural, but at the same time, there should be a general standard of how we treat people, even if we are suspicious of them. So, yes.
Yeah, okay. What would be, just off the top of your head, or if you have experience with this, what would be a way to alleviate some of that suspicion, to make your entrance into a new context more successful? Enrique?
Just be yourself.
Mhm.
I work in the prison system, and you have to engage people. So as you're doing your work, I can remember first starting, and the perceptions that people had of Muslims, and then they saw me, and it didn't really fit their perception. And then, but I found that, by engaging people, talking to people, and just going on about my business in a professional way. Some of them were old school people that, you couldn't change them no matter what you did. But,
So you say, so it's important also to not change just in response to that environment. I mean, you don't change who you are. Try to be forthright. Sarah?
I think having a good reference helps. Being affiliated with either an organization that's respected or recognized within the Muslim community, or be affiliated with a person that's well respected or recognized.
Right. Yes. Amna?
Something I'm thinking about is people aren't going to come to you, especially if they're distrustful or just unfamiliar. They're not going to go out of your way. So when you're in a position of authority or leadership, that you really have to go out of your way to meet people where they're at. So when you go out and hi, I'm the new chaplain, and it's nice to meet you. You can come over. So introduce yourself. I don't know how well this works in the prison or military setting, but definitely on college campuses, they'll have a welcome meeting. I'm the new chaplain, and for everyone. But I think even on an individual basis, it's very important to go out there and introduce yourself.
Right. So part of it is you have to, people have a right to have a bit of caution and to wait and see if you deserve earning their trust. So you can't necessarily force it. Being introduced by others or being part of a community of others who can vouch for you is important. And in fact, to some extent, demanding that is part of necessary caution in that's really encouraged in Islam, in our tradition. That you don't just take your knowledge or put all your trust in someone who has not proven themselves worthy of that position. Not to say that we're suspicious about them, but if a person chooses to put themselves in that position, no one has a right to it. If someone chooses to serve, they also have to be willing to take the added scrutiny, to be subject to the added higher standards that we expect of people who are in such a sensitive position. You're not just like anyone else. If you have decided to take on that responsibility to care for people's, support people in their religious practice and spiritual journey in a very sensitive context. So, otherwise, this is how many people get misled, is that without, whether it's in marriage or, you know, listening to the teachings of certain people or otherwise, people can easily get misled by having that kind of unique person who's really not attached to the general sentiments of the community. And we know that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that we should stay with the, you know, the broad community. We are a religious tradition that is communitarian. It's not all about whatever we think Islam says or is right. We're part of a community, and that can be, you know, that affiliation can come through many different ways. You know, for some people, they have a very specific school of thought that they belong to, a very stringent process of certification and certain forms of knowledge. For others, and I believe this is equally valid, it's that they've done a lot of service to their community. I mean, they've been with that community. People have seen them, how they are in every day. I think about, for example, when I went with the Nawawi Foundation, we went on a trip to China a number of years ago. Dr. Sherman Jackson, Omar Abdullah, Abdul Hakim Murad, and others. And what was really interesting to us was visiting the women's mosques in China. So China has this interesting phenomenon of women's mosques with women imams who serve the community. And I remember asking many times, you know, now there's some more formal programs, but in one community, I remember asking the people who were gathered, well, how did you choose this person to be your imam, your female imam? And they said, well, we've known her from the time she was a young girl, and she always loved the mosque. She used to love coming to the mosque, and she used to love helping people. So her love of Islam, her love of the religion, and her service to people, to them, were the two things that gave her credibility, you know? And they felt they could rely on her. It wasn't necessarily some formal process that she went through, but through the community. And that's also you know, an authentic way of earning trust and being that person who can provide service. Continuing on, and then, so we have the specific context of you know, challenges for trust, but then there are also the human emotions that come in, you know, in every setting. We can become jealous or resentful of others. Why is this person being promoted and someone isn't? Why? We also have the reality of very limited resources. You know, if there's only there's a limited budget in every organization, and if one group is drawing on a lot of those resources more than others, even if the others' needs are being met, there may be some resentment. And we've seen this sometimes, I know even at the university where I teach, when the Muslim Students Association was granted a new, larger prayer room, because they needed it, because they were praying in the hall and people were tripping over their shoes and bodies and all sorts of things. There were some chaplains from the other religious traditions who said, well, why do they get half the space that's allotted to all of us? You know, shouldn't it be equal? But religious accommodation is on the basis of need, not just equality. So it's equality in terms of having people's needs met, not that everyone gets the same thing. Just like there may be one disabled person on a campus, let's say, to exaggerate it, but they still have a right to a accessible bathroom, right? And maybe only one person is using it, and everyone else has to line up. But that's because people need to be accommodated, should be accommodated according to their needs. So there are these human realities that we will all have to negotiate in these settings. In this chapter, they talk about PVE, which in the United States is known as CVE, so preventing violent extremism. In the UK, countering violent extremism is the acronym that's used here. And this is something that features fairly prominently in this chapter, talking about politics, how that's put such a strain on the bonds of trust that we need in this work. Trust in each other, trust in the chaplains who serve, our co-workers. So it is very challenging, and it is a cloud that hangs over all of us all the time. I mean, you know, we all think when we're on social media or sending an email or having conversations, there's a kind of unhealthy concern with how might this be perceived if taken out of context. Then they highlight the inclusion or exclusion of Muslim women in chaplaincy work, and we'll look in more detail at that later. And then the differences between different schools of thought. So what is, if the people who you are serving, say in a prison, are asking for religious needs to be accommodated, you may belong to another school of thought where you don't agree with them that this is a necessary religious practice, but they're asking for it. So let's say I can think, for example, of many cases when I lived in Connecticut where this became a huge problem and a major dispute. So, for example, if women ask for a Jummah prayer and they're claiming a right for religious accommodation, they want Jummah prayer and to be able to attend it in their correctional institution, what would you respond? The institution comes to you and they say, you know, is it really required for Muslim women to attend Jummah prayer? Do we have to offer this accommodation? What would you say to them? Brother Muhammad?
I mean, personally, I would say let them have it.
You would say let them have it. What if they said, is this necessary? They're claiming this is a religious right. It's a necessary part of their religion. Do we have to accommodate this specific practice? Safwan?
It's not necessarily what's necessary. It's about what's about serving them, what they want, making them feel comfortable in their religious practice, whether it's necessary or not, but it's what they want. I'm not saying that's right.
Yes? You want to? Yes?
I would just think from my perspective, I would make an argument for its necessity given their condition. They're in a condition where there are, Jummah is about maintaining community, making sure the message of Islam is communicated within a community, and these people are in a place where they are not connected to men in one community. So in their situation, the necessity of Jummah from a religious standpoint is quite a strong case. I'm not going to give a fatwa for it, but in terms of the institution, I would say yes, they have a strong religious case for the necessity of Jummah.
Okay. Yes, Brother Suleiman?
I know the discussion is connected to the conversation of whether women have to attend Jummah. So I know that's some of the I don't agree that they don't. That's not my personal understanding. That women don't have to attend Jummah. So my suggestion would be facilitated, which leads to the next part of the discussion of how do you facilitate a Jummah for all women. And then you have that discussion. But I would say yes too.
But if they say, yeah, we're happy to give them a place to pray, but we don't want to, to have to bring in an imam to deliver, to lead the Jummah, we don't have that ability. So isn't it enough if we just let them have a room and they can pray? We're not saying they can't pray, We're just saying that we don't believe, from what we've read about Islam, that they require a Jummah with an imam who we have to pay to bring into the institution. Amna?
I really think Muhammad kind of addressed that, in a minority context, and you can argue that it is a necessity. In a minority context where you're not surrounded by Muslims, even in a prison or an institution, you don't have the same access of community, of having this shared ideology, of learning on a weekly basis. And Jummah is just really important in facilitating that, of having a constant reminder. And if you deny people that right, then you really are denying a necessity. It is a right for them to be able to be reminded. And it was always a right for women to be able to go to Jummah. So if Jummah is not available because they're stuck in an institution where they don't have access to it, then you are denying them a right that is necessary.
I think that the last part of what you said is really key here and important. And let me just say that the way, the kind of responses that I've given you are ways that, look, every institution wants to minimize its expense, what it has to do. And there will always be an attempt to limit services. And unfortunately, what happens is very often there'll be, they'll find someone who can give them an opinion to do that. And that person might even be a Muslim who is sometimes, sincerely thinks this is the right opinion, right? It's a misreading or misunderstanding. So there's a few things to point out, is to be aware of this, that there's always going to be this pressure, and there will be an attempt to use Islamic language, some sort of fiqh or backward way of reading it, to limit services, one. Second, of course, a chaplain is not a mufti. It's not the role of the chaplain to come and give the correct Islamic position or fiqh position. Your goal, your role is to facilitate the religious accommodation and spiritual life of these people. And if someone, if this part of the tradition, whether it's in your school of thought or not, if this is how they relate to Islam, and in Canada, the way the Canadian Human Rights Code works is it's called, and the Canadian Constitution, as long as there's a nexus with religious practice, and in the United States with the Religious Freedom Act, it's the same thing, that as long as there's any kind of ground somewhere in the religious tradition with that practice, you don't block it. It doesn't have to be orthodox. It doesn't have to be the majority opinion, but you could say it's grounded in that, right? Same thing with niqab, for example. You may not believe that it's obligatory for women. You may not like the practice, but clearly there are opinions. There always have been opinions in Islam that this could be part of Muslim women's practice, and some believe it's obligatory. So it's not your role to give a fatwa and say it's not, it's not part of it, part of Islam. Now, whether a practice can be accommodated in a particular setting or not is another question, because sometimes you can have a right, but the needs of the institution, safety, security, other things, might preclude it. And at that point, it's an apologetic, we believe you have a right, try to accommodate it, we can't. And that's how these things usually end up in the court, and things go on and on with a compromise. But the point is, what Amna said is that Muslim women have always had a right to attend the mosque, right? The Prophet Muhammad said, لَتَمْنَعُوا إِمَاءَ اللَّهِ مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ. The women, worshippers of God, should not be prevented from the mosques of God. They always have had a right to access those. And the fact that women can be exempt for certain reasons, or even a general reason, from a Jummah prayer does not mean that they don't have to go, right? Because frankly, and this is something that, maybe we don't want to dig in too deeply to, if you look at traditional fiqh, institutionalized people actually don't need to attend Jummah, men either. So there are the basic conditions for Jummah in classical Islamic law actually exempt incarcerated people from having to do it. But what a disaster that would be if incarcerated people in America couldn't have access to this important collective, communal function. And it gives them something that, it's not only that it's the place where they could gather together and pray and they can hear, a good sermon, because you can do that in different ways. Like someone could, even if it's not a Jummah, you can give a nice religious lesson. It could be the time for prayer. But part of it is they're still connected to the outside, It's part of resisting that institutionalization mentality where you become so accustomed to being apart from society that you can't be in society when you're out anymore. You are praying, you are coming together with your brothers, you're coming together with your sisters in this act of worship like Muslims all over the world. So it's so important to feel that you're still part of this ummah, you're still part of this community, even though you have these specific circumstances. So this is where it's so important to talk to people who are more experienced, that if you ever get a question like this, in whatever institution you're working in, you get a question like this, well, doesn't Islam say this? Just let's hold off for a minute. Don't be tricked into giving an answer that then will be used to, to stop resources going into being able to facilitate these services. So that's a word of caution for that, because it's a very common thing in America.